Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I don't know how you got here, but I do hope that you'll stay until the end of this video because in this particular video, we're going to continue working on a condominium studio unit here in the Philippines that I have been commissioned for. So let's go ahead and just take a look at what I have done since then. So I did a lot of this off screen. I did start the detailed drafting in my last video, but I realized that it's going to be very boring to watch, and I'm pretty sure that anybody that's still watching had already fallen asleep, so I didn't really keep going into it. But off screen, I did um, continue working on it, and this isn't, you know, super complete. This is just enough to get the contractors to do what they have to do. So, as an architect, when you turn over a project, um, to a contractor, the contractor can either follow the project one of two ways, by specification or by design. When it's by specification, that's when it's just all detailed, like everything, every single way to install the tiles, way to install the sinks, way to install this, way to fix this, way to paint that, everything, even like the surface of the wall, how it's supposed to be painted. You're gonna say there that it's gonna be a CHB wall of 4 inches thick with wires spaced at blah 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 point 0.3 and point 0.45 horizontally, vertically, um, respectively, and then skim coated, uh, plaster, skim coated, and then painted, blah blah blah. Like the whole detail, you're gonna list that all down, and that's why if you ever really want to make money in architecture, specification. That's the secret. That's the true secret. Just learn everything about specifications because you can actually like, if you work for like a contract, for example, like if you know how to deal with specifications and you know how to apply specifications, bank, man. I'm telling you. Like me personally, to do specification sheets, like it's a real pain in the neck, man. Or it's a real pain in the bottom. So I actually charge like high cost depending on how big the unit is or how big the house is or how big the building is. I actually charge a lot to do specifications, especially since I know that if I'm going to do specifications, I'm very picky and I'm very meticulous. Like with drawings, I'm meticulous, but with specifications, I'm like beyond meticulous. And it does take a lot of concentration, and it's so freaking boring. Like I can't explain. Like one time I worked on a specification sheet and I was just like I almost fell asleep. Like every time I work on it, I always had to fall asleep every 30 minutes because my brain was just fried. But yeah, so that's how specifications work. You provide the complete detail of instructions and application and materials and estimate everything. Um, and then there's the easier way, which most architects, I believe, do, because, like I said, for specifications, that's more of a forte. If you want to be an architect that works on that kind of stuff, you can do it. You can make a lot of money from it. And I also believe, like in other fields, such as, especially in engineering, that's like a lot of money for doing specifications. Because it's one thing to do the computations for like loads and stuff, but it's another thing to do the complete computations of everything. So the other way, as I mentioned, is by design, and by design is the one that, like I said, is which most architects try to do because what we do is something like this, where everything is more in a visual representation, and the contractor's job is to basically translate what they see on these visual presentations into real life. That's it. That's basically it. So even without these drawings, if they just had like what I did on SketchUp, which is already enough, like to get an idea of what to do, um, then the contractor should be able to do it. But we also have to take another thing into consideration, which is the client. So I usually advise to the client that it's better to have at least a basic drawings like these, because these are the real details. When a contractor does something based on design, uh, that kind of gives them a lot of freedom, because it's one thing when you specify what they have to do and they don't do it, but it's another thing if you just kind of like entrust with them what to do and then they don't do it. You see what I'm saying? Because like if the contractor doesn't do it the way that you had envisioned it, just because the drawings that you submitted were not fully specified, and you're not really on hands on site, then usually the contractor may just go on a different direction, which is fine also, because they also have to work around the budget of the client. And like I said, so that's like if we have the three dimensions of architecture, which if we have like this scenario where these are the three dimensions of architecture, the design, the specifications, and the contractor, we still have the client, which will be the fourth dimension, I guess. And the reason that like I said, the reason I didn't do the specification sheets for this particular project is because I charge a lot for it. Because it's a really stressful thing to do. You really have to put the time and effort to make good good specifications. If you like know people, like if you're an architect or a contractor or engineer or what have you, and you know people that just copy and paste specifications and you use them, yeah, I suppose it's to each their own. I don't agree with it, but I hope that you're not charging like a ridiculous amount for those specifications. At least be fair, you're not really doing the work. So try to be a bit ethical about it. But in this case, so it's mostly by design because the client did have a budget that we couldn't breach. So everything here is just enough for the contractor to work with. And also, I've agreed to do some on-site inspections as well. So that's another thing. If you don't want to do all the specifications, but you're willing to do site inspections and make corrections on site, you take notes, and then you pass them on to the client so that the client knows that the contractor has to make these changes. Um, then that's another way you can approach a project. It's really depends upon you. For that instance, though, I charge a daily rate. So, like I said, since the client did have a budget, these are kind of issues that it's fine to negotiate with. So, like for instance, on this particular project, they don't live that far away. It's not really, I'm not really going to do any building myself. I'm just going to go there, inspect it, then go home. So we kind of negotiated for a decent price. So it's kind of at your own discretion on how you deal with it. But yeah, what I would do if in this scenario is I would go to the site like once a week, make a punch list. Contractor has to fix the problems of the punch list that I've created. I turn over the punch list to the client. The client is able to see like the before and after. I will also be able to see the before and after until we reach a point where the contractor has fulfilled everything that they have been hired to do. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, that's just a quick introduction of detailed specifications, dealing with contractors, and dealing with on-site concerns. Um, so now I'm going to show you the sheets. So here, these are all of A4 size. Um, since it is just a studio unit and not that, it's not like a hefty, super size studio unit. It's just a studio unit uh, you know, for living a cozy life, basically. You're not going to be living like a super luxurious life. You're just living a cozy life, which is, awesome. For me, it's awesome. I enjoy coziness more. So it came out to 9 sheets. Excuse me. Excuse me again. And of A4 size. So for this, I just have very, very, very basic details going on. I have my proposed floor plan for the unit, the electrical layout. So there's two kinds of layouts. Are there in a, like a building uh building blueprints for sign and seal? You should know the difference between electrical and electronic. So electrical deals more with like outlets, switches, lights, stuff like that. Electronic, that kind of deals with like things that are not completely fixed, like you can move them around a bit. I guess it's kind of in the same vein, but you have to kind of understand the difference. Damn it. I had it in my head a moment ago, but now I'm drawing a blank. But if it's electrical outlets, data, telephone lines, that's mostly part of electrical. And it also nowadays also has to do with telecommunications, PABX. So things in the architect like you have to keep up with things in the architecture world, man. There's just too much going on. Um, Electronic things are kind of things like like the speakers, like if you have a speaker system, entertainment system, stuff like that. So if you kind of think, you can kind of think of it whereas electronics are things that, although they can be fixed, they can also be moved around. Uh, so like it's a separate entity. I don't know if you're following, but I hope you are. Um, but yeah, so I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to explain any of that, but I hope you get it. I had the perfect explanation a moment ago, but I can't for the life of me remember what I was thinking. Um, Reflected ceiling plan. So, misconception about this is like you kind of turn the building around and that's the plan, which is not the case because then it would just be ceiling plan. The reason it's called a reflected ceiling plan is because actually it's just mirroring the ceiling. Because what happens is you're going to overlap this onto the floor plan, and that's why we call it the reflected ceiling plan. The reflected ceiling plan also shows some details that most people are not familiar with. It's mostly like the distance of the lights, the elevation of the ceiling heights, stuff like that. Those are the basic things. There are other things that you can show on the reflected ceiling plan, but like I said, this is just a very basic drawing. What are those other things you might be asking? Well, ask me in the comments and I'll answer. Proposed switch layout. So this is actually different from the ceiling plan. So the ceiling plan is more on like dimensions and details of the ceiling. Switch layout just kind of tells you where the switch should be located and what do they affect. Here, as you can see, I have two-way A. So 2W stands for two-way. This is a very interesting thing about switches. When you say two-way, it basically means that you only have one switch for one light. And the reason it's two-way is because when you turn it on, that's one way. When you turn it off, that's the second way. Now, when you have three-way switches, that's when you have two different switches for one light, or two different switches for one receptacle. Either way, you have two different switches. And the reason being for that, of course, is you have one, two, and then whatever you switch again is the third cycle in the movement, I believe. It's kind of easier to show on a on the drawings how the three-way and the two-way switches work, but just keep that in mind, guys. Two-way means you only have one switch. Three-way means you have two switches, and it just goes so forth, so forth. Four ways, three switches. So there's always one more way. You add one more way to how many switches that you want for one light or receptacle. I've had several projects, bigger houses, of course, not a studio unit, where uh, lighting is like a real hassle. I designed a house just last year in the year 2021. And it was a really big house, so it's kind of I kind of enjoy these better because we have here two-way A, and we use letters, right, for the switch to distinguish that which light is which. So here, this right here is a light. FA, by the way, fire alarm, and this is fire sprinkler. FS, fire sprinkler. So fire alarm, fire sprinkler, just for your information. But this is letter A. This is the light that this switch will turn on and off. Here we have two-way BC. So we have B and C. So, and we have these arcs here. That means that when you turn on C, these four lights will turn on as well. And same here, two-way D and E. So for example, if I wanted to add a three-way switch for letter B, I would remove, I would separate these. It would be three-way B, two-way C. So, and then here I would have three-way B and then two-way D and E. So, yeah. Now, if you can imagine on a giant house with a bunch of lights, you're gonna start going to the double letters, triple letters. So I think that that particular project went into triple C. So two-way triple C, stuff like that. And you you think it's easy doing this, but when there's a lot of lights going on everywhere, especially, for example, if you have a two-story home and you have a three-way switch for a light on the stairway. The light on the stairway has to be operated by one on the ground floor and one on the second floor. So you have a three-way on each side. And then you also have the lights outside, which will be operated by a switch. For example, you have to figure out where you want to put like the three-way switch. So one of them will of course be like maybe in the living room or the kitchen. So where will the one upstairs be? Will it be in the master bedroom? Will it be in the family area? And you kind of have to come up with your own reasoning for that. Like, is this what the client wanted, or is this how you see the traffic going on in that particular area? Uh, yeah, lighting. Lighting is also very interesting because it also has its own specialty in the field of architecture. So specializing in lighting is fun not only because of this, like where you have to figure out where everything is going, but also because you get to figure out like how the lights affect the area, or like the timing of like certain lighting has like certain pattern, timing, stuff like that. Um, and it's just complicated. It's kind of the same thing, if you're going to specialize in specifications, you have lighting. And then we have sections here. Um, just gonna brush through these sections. These are called, I call them carpentry works, but there's actually no universal term for these kind of things. So that's why I just use carpentry works. But like for example, if it has to do more with metal, then I call them welding works. Or if it has to do more with 3D printing, I guess 3D printing. It just depends on what's going on here. Glassworks, foam works, whatever happens, or whatever kind of work it is, that's what I call it. So I'm not sure if in the future they're going to come up with this actual term for this, but so this is what I call carpentry works. And as you can see, carpentry 01. I also have it here labeled in the proposed floor plan. Um, For the proposed floor plan, if you have like a lot of furnitures, you would actually separate furniture from the proposed floor plan. Excuse me. Uh, And you would have what you call a furniture layout plan. Uh, what am I? Excuse me. So yeah, you have all these things. Now, in the elevation or the sections, I removed the refrigerator, and I also removed like the TV, because there's outlets behind those areas that I had to make sure were being seen. This is kind of one of those things that you can actually separate it. Um, and in order to consolidate them all into one sheet, because like I said, the client, we're kind of trying to work with a budget-friendly assessment here. There is a lot of details here that I didn't put in, like I don't have the elevation symbols and the elevation heights. I just have dimensions. And it's fine as long as, like I said, the contractor can figure out what's going on. Excuse me. But for the carpentry works, I just have details of the more difficult works, like the bed that I designed. Now, in the bed I designed on the SketchUp, I had these KD stands for kiln dried. Uh, so 2 by 2 kiln dried lumber, 2 inch by 2 inch kiln dried lumber, sides prepared for easy sliding, which basically means like they can apply some sort of wax or they can apply rollers. I don't know how the contractor will do it, but at least they have an idea that this is supposed to be sliding against each other. Because if they don't slide against each other, then basically it's pointless, right? Anyway, as you can see here, on the drawing, I had on the SketchUp drawing, I had made this 50 millimeters by 50 millimeters, which is actually incorrect. um, 2 by 2 inch lumber is not. I wouldn't recommend using 2 by 2 inch lumber because what happens is when they cut lumber, they cut it. The reason they call it 2 by 2 is because they cut it literally 2 inches by 2 inches. When you say kiln dried, the surfaces get smoothened first of all, or before the surfaces get smoothened, they get kiln dried, which means that 2 by 2 inch lumber is like when it's just fresh from the bark, fresh from the tree and everything. It still has this moisture in it, and it can absorb moisture, and it doesn't have any pest control measures. Like they don't infuse it with chemicals that keep insects out of it, stuff like that, like termites especially. So when you just put 2 by 2 inch lumber, then that lumber has a tendency to either get infested with termites or absorb moisture very well. Whereas if you get kiln dried lumber, so like I said, first thing they do is they kiln dry it, which means like it's kind of like putting it in an oven. That's why they call it kiln dried. And then they smoothen the sides, right? And then it's actually because of these two actions, the actual dimensions of the lumber also shrinks, and it becomes somewhere around for 2 by 2 inches, it becomes 1 3/4 inches, I believe. And for bigger pieces of lumber beyond 2 inches anyway, it gets reduced by about half an inch. So 2 by 2 gets reduced by 1/4. And I believe it's just simply because 2 by 2 is already small enough as it is. But let's say you have 2 by 3. So the 2 inches becomes 1 3/4, and the 3 inches become 2.5. Or yeah, 2.5. So yeah, when you specify lumber as a material, make sure you know um, the exact measurement. Don't just, put whatever lumber. Now, for plywood, that's a different story. When you say 3/4 inch thick plywood, that's definitely 3/4 thick. Another thing is casters. If you know what a caster is, raise your hand. Okay. Anyway, these are casters. They're wheels, basically. I don't know why they call them casters. I never researched it. Every time I hear caster, I think of Outlaw Star. For all of you anime fans that got that, thank you. But yeah, that's probably something I should do is figure out what do casters mean. Um, when you have casters, you kind of indicate that they're 2 inches diameter, but you don't indicate the swivel on the casters. So here I have the caster, which is the wheel is 2 inches in diameter, which is about 50 millimeters. But you also have to research from the end of that diameter, the from the perimeter of the circle of the wheel, how far is that from the end of the swiveling mechanism? So there's a lot of things that I want to discuss here, but we're just, I'm just being chill about it. Let's not get into so much details. Um, then here I also designed the table and the ottomans. So as you can see here, we have the foldable table. Um, and I believe this would be enough for the contractor to understand. And finally, let's talk about the border. So my border is, for the most part, this is a complete border. Title bar, actually, let's call it title bar, not border. So basic things you have in your border: logo. So you've seen my logo all over the place. Uh, PRC number, Professional Regulation Commission of the Philippines. So um, is it professional regulation? I believe. Let me see first. Yeah, professional regulation. Yeah, professional regulation board. So, oh my gosh, these are a lot of um, abbreviations that you have to memorize. Professional Regulation Commission. So this number is provided to you by the Professional Regulation Commission. They of the Philippines, of course. They are in charge of all the listed professionals here in the Philippines. So of course, I am listed in under the Professional Regulation Commission's one of the architects of the PRC, basically. How many? I'm gonna keep saying Professional Regulation Commission until you memorize it, because you're gonna need that for the board exam. PRC is also in charge of the board exams here in the Philippines. So we have the Professional Regulation Commission Board, blah blah blah. Um, yeah, and it's the board exam is. I'm just gonna say, don't stress out about it. Just do your best, and if you're taking the board exam, but I'm not gonna do many review material for board exams because I don't believe it's necessary. Uh, anyway, next thing I have here is the IAPO number. What does this stand for? Integrated and accredited professional integrated architects of the Philippines. Shit. What does this stand for? It's like such um hmm. I know what it stands for. Give me a second. Integrated I is integrated. I know that for a fact. Integrated. Integrated and accredited professional organization of architects. Integrated and accredited professional organization of architects. I believe that's it. I know I is integrated. I'm sure about that. Integrated and accredited professional organization of architects. You know what? Let me just Google it. One moment. IAPOA. IAPOA stands for Integrated and Accredited Professional Organization of Architects. I was right. Okay. Oh man. I hope nobody from IAPO is watching this video. But anyway, that's what it stands for. Integrated and Accredited Professional Organization of Architects. Integrated and accredited Integrated and Accredited Professional Organization of Architects. Say it with me, guys. Integrated and Accredited Professional Organization of Architects. Okay. Ah, man. And those words are all huge. It's imagine seeing that on the board exam. Um, So the integrated and accredited professional organization of architects are uh, they're not exactly they don't hold anything on the board exam or anything, but you have to be because the integrated and accredited professional organization of architects are they have their own chapters all over the Philippines. Excuse me. Not only in the Philippines, but they actually do have chapters outside of the Philippines. Oh man, why do I keep burping? Which is actually quite interesting because that's why, like, you would think that the P would stand for Philippines, but no, it does not stand for Philippines. Um, the reason for that being is because, yeah, they do have branches outside of the Philippines. I believe they have one in Dubai and Singapore. Um, I know there's a few in the US. So they have chapters. They have chapters all over the place. Um, so the integrated and accredited professional organization of architects are basically kind of um different parts of like they're all one IAPOA, right? But you have different chapters because if we're all just going to be under one area, then that's going to kind of be difficult to manage the different credentials that we need to keep up with for being an architect. Anyway, enough of that. Remember, guys, say it with me. Integrated and accredited professional organization of architects. That's going to be part of the board exam. PTR number. Uh, Philippine tax registration number. I also have this. Um, Let me just make sure I might be wrong again. PTR meaning Philippines. I'm pretty sure it's Philippine uh, tax registration number. Oh, Philippine tax receipt number. Damn, I was wrong again. Philippine tax receipt. Philippine tax receipt. Remember, guys, Philippine tax receipt. I don't know why I thought it was registration. At least I got the first two words right. Anyways, the Philippine tax receipt. You need this, of course, for your taxes. That's all it is. You just pay taxes. um, for those of you that don't know, you also have to apply for a cedula if you're a Philippine architect, of course. If you're an architect, a licensed architect here in the Philippines practicing architecture, um, then you need to always register your Philippine tax receipt. That's probably why I thought it was register, but it's receipt, Philippine tax receipt. You always have to apply for a Philippine tax receipt and a cedula. You can do this at any municipal or city hall here in the Philippines. You don't have to be based in one area. What matters is that every year you pay in the month of January. If you pay later than that, I believe you have to pay a fee. But remember that this is only you only have to actually do this if you're practicing architecture or if your job requires that your license is still uh, valid and not yet expired. You have to keep every year you have to keep updating it. But if you're not, then like for me, I'm practicing and I'm also working, so I uh, do update my Philippine tax receipt every year. I also work, so I get deducted my taxes from my regular job. And yeah, I'm not really, I don't like paying taxes, but I believe that everyone should pay taxes because the taxes are kind of like, they kind of what make the country keep going. And if you don't like how high the taxes are, I'm not going to get political or anything, but I'm just saying, like, don't skip on your taxes, guys. Just if you have a problem with how much taxes you're paying, do it through the proper try to deal with it through the proper channels because not paying your taxes is just problems for other people that are in more need of, you know, in the long run. Anyway, uh, let's get off that topic. And finally, tax identification number. So sometimes this is actually funny. So the N, I'm sure about this one because I was a victim, or I was one of these people in the past where I would also put, so if you notice here, PRC number, IAPOA number, PTR number. I used to put TIN number, and you don't have to put number because number is literally in the abbreviation, tax identification number. So tax identification number is also issued to you when you start, usually when you start paying taxes. You have to file for it, you have to get it, you have to get a card, you have to get a number, and yeah, I use the TIN number to get my PTR number, and it's like my basic information, man. So anyway, the reason I don't have those filled up here is because in this particular case, the only although I do pay for all of these things, the only time you actually have to sign and seal, or the only time you have to fill this up, are when you have to sign and seal drawings. For these kind of drawings, there's not any particular need to sign and seal. I just have to, you know, unless the condominium building actually requests that I provide these documentations, then it's not a problem. Republic Act 9266. Actually, you can word this however you want. I don't remember the exact words. You can find them in the National Building Code. These drawings as instruments of service are the property and documents of architect Gian Greco S. Cruz Jr. It shall be unlawful for any person without the written consent of the architect or author of said documents to duplicate or copy said instruments. So this just goes to show what this is kind of one of the cool things about being an architect. So when I design something, it's mine. It's my property. If I see you guys copy this, I'm suing your butt. No, I'm not gonna sue you guys for, I mean, if you like some of these ideas, I don't mind. But if it's like something really big, then I have the right to sue you, especially if I'm paying for these things right here. If I'm paying for my all of these things like PRC, uh, as of this year, 2022, you have to renew it every 3 years still. IAPO number, every year you have to renew that guy. PTR number, every year have to renew it. The only thing you don't have to renew is the TIN. So PRC, we renew it every 3 years. We also have to get CPD points. Um, and CPD points are no, wait, it's not CPD points. What am I? Wait. CPD meaning Philippines. CPD units. Damn it. Why do I keep making up? Anyway, continuing professional development. Every year, as of uh, or every 3 years, you have to get continuing professional development units, depending on, I don't know, like I know a few years ago you had to get 30 units. As of this year, you only need 15 units. I'm not sure what will happen in the future. It depends. And getting CPD units, continuing professional development units, it's not an easy task, man. You have to. Sometimes these things like are 2 day seminars. You have to sit there. You have to be present. You have to be present throughout the whole thing. And then you have to get the certificate. You have to collect the certificates. You have to present the certificates. It's not fun, man. Um, and those are also not cheap. You have to pay for those seminars. Um, it's it's part of the job, you know. If you want to be professional, uh, sometimes I find because these are all seminars. Continuing professional development uh, units are gathered when you take like so when you go to the seminar, they're going to talk about certain subjects that you should learn about. The recent past few years, there are like seminars leaning towards like infection control environment, which has been quite interesting because we talk about the needs for cleaner oxygen, cleaner HVAC systems. We use HEPA filters. Uh, we use like these. It's a some of them are quite interesting. Some of them, however, you kind of question like, why is this person the speaker? I'm not gonna lie. Like you sometimes you just sit there and like, this is not my story. This is a story from one of my former, uh, one of the one architect that I apprenticeship uh, under a couple years ago, and he was telling me the story of like how they were discussing how um, roofs should be constructed, roofing materials, and they're like saying if you have an idea of how roofing materials are laid out, so it's kind of like slanted downward, right? And each level is on top of each other, right? And what the speaker was proposing was he was saying like this is the wrong way to lay roofing sheets on each other. You shouldn't put them like this because what the tendency is wind comes under it and blows it off. And then what he was suggesting is you lay the roofing like this, where the lower one is on top of the upper one. So that way the wind doesn't penetrate underneath. So, I mean, I can imagine myself sitting in that seminar and just being like, okay, what happens when it rains? Anyway, suffice it to say, it's a requirement. Sometimes you're just gonna have speakers, you're gonna have seminars that are just like, oh my gosh, how? And you'll have speakers that are just like, wow, that blew my mind. Anyway, going back, so considering all of those things, one of the cool things about being an architect is my design is my property. It's mine. I don't want to see you guys stealing my design, and I'm not going to steal your design. Um, this is kind of the reason why I get upset sometimes when like people like literally just ask me to copy someone else's work. It's like no, don't ever ask me again. I'm not going to do it. And they and it happens a lot, you know. They'll just show you a picture and they'll be like, "This is what we want. Can you make this?" Some recently as well, someone tried to, because my answer is, of course, since I also want to have my own clients, is I can do that kind of design, and or even like I know you guys think that I speak English all the time, but of course, uh, I also speak Tagalog. Tagalog. Uh, Sige po, kaya ko naman yung ganyang klaseng design. Pero wag lang yung ganyan-ganyan, something like that. So I do say, like I can do that kind of design if you'd like that kind of method, but it will still be signature, my style. And I remember this person because we were chatting, and they screenshotted that. They actually screenshotted it because I told them when we were already starting the works, like when I was already starting drafting, they were upset because they thought that I was actually going to copy the design they showed me. They screenshotted that portion and they sent it to me and they said, "Oh, kaya ko, kala ko kaya mong gawin yung ganyang design." And it's like, yeah, I can do that kind of design, but I didn't say I'm gonna copy it. I don't know. But it's don't be that kind of client, please. Next detail here, we have the client, the type of project, and here in the at very end, this is just like for tracking which is what. So we have the sheet content, drafter, checker, sheet number. Drafter JGC, that is I, that is me, Gian Greco Cruz. Checker is also me, of course. Who else is it going to be? Gian Greco Cruz. Why is it important to have a drafter and checker? Ultimately, when I sign it, drafter, let's say this is John Doe and this is uh, Jane Cock, I don't know. So John Doe drafted it. Uh, and then they submitted it to the checker, Jane Cocker. What did I say earlier? I'm sorry. Cocker! Hancock, I don't know. Jane Hancock. And Jane Hancock checked it. Now, for me as the architect, I can still check it again, but I'd like to see that, for example, John Doe drafted it, submitted it to Jane Hancock. Jane Hancock wrote the corrections on the sheet, gave it back to John Doe. John Doe did the revisions, gave it back to Jane Hancock with the revision with the sheets that she wrote on. And Jane Hancock submits it to me, and I'll just look over what Jane Hancock did to John Doe's drawings. That's it. So basically, if you're an architect, you don't have to check everything yourself. You can have your own checker. However, if you're like me, where you're very meticulous about every little detail, you'll probably end up still checking it anyway. And, well, what can I say? That's just how I operate. Oh, man. Next, the sheet number. So there's very many different ways to do this, but this is like the most basic way. A stands for architectural and 01 sheet number. So architectural sheet 01, architectural sheet 02, architectural sheet 03. Now if you look here on the details, we have here, this is one, or here, 1A01. So this is drawing one of architectural sheet number 1. Okay? If we look here, I have these are the section symbols right here. These with the arrow and the circle and the blah 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 blah. What I have here is drawing 1 architectural sheet 5. So we look for sheet 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and drawing 1. Drawing 1 architectural sheet 5. That's pretty much how those work. Now, there's different ways, like sometimes it's AA, sometimes it's P for plumbing, sometimes it's structural S, electrical E. Um, it all depends on how much detail or how many people are involved in the project, how many groups. That's kind of the beautiful thing about architecture nowadays is so the architecture is in charge. The architect is in charge of the whole plan of something. In this case, we also have so if we look at the section here, in this section we have an opening for a air conditioner, which is also seen on the SketchUp file that I drew. So to determine what kind of air conditioner the client would need, we can get in touch with a mechanical engineer, and the mechanical engineer will say, oh, you have this much space, you'll need this much horsepower to provide enough of cool air exchange for this long, and you have to have it cleaned every so and so. Awesome. Electrical engineer comes in, they see all these outlets, they're going to be like, wait a minute, we have to look at the panel board. So here, this is where the panel board is. We do have 2 spares, so we can add the additional blah, blah, blah. One of them, let's say one of them is like something high powered. So if you have like a TV, that's not really something to worry about when it comes to electronic devices. But usually air conditioners, refrigerators, those things do require their own socket. And that's just to prevent the whole place from, uh, having an electrical, uh, oh man, why am I forgetting the words? Burnout, something like that. So usually panel boards have two spares. Um, there are times like if you don't get an electrical engineer, what happens is like you get somebody that just like, they think they know everything. Things can go wrong, and it won't happen overnight, but as the time builds up, like let's say you want to install another air conditioner, and the guy you hired sees that there's an outlet, so he just connects the air conditioner to that one outlet. But it turns out that that particular outlet does not have the required wiring installations. So the wires are too thick or too thin. There we go. So what could happen is the wires are going to burn up really fast because the way the electricity works is, if you don't know by now, it's basically electrons passing back and forth, neutrons, electrons. Uh, so it's electrons passing back and forth. And what this does is it causes friction. And so if you rub your two hands together, you'll notice that they are starting to get a bit hot, right? Imagine running your air conditioner on that kind of wiring system, and then that particular wire is also connected to a bunch of other outlets on your panel board. Short circuit breaks could cause fire. Please don't do that. As much as possible, hire somebody that knows what they're talking about. This is kind of also one of those things where you want to get someone who has a bit of experience at least, or knows what they're doing, like really knows what they're doing. It's kind of hard to tell these days, but I kind of like, I don't know, I kind of ask certain questions like just to see. Like I remember once, like I was working on a project with someone who was a bit more experienced than I was, and they were asking me, "Oh, where does the can you see where the air conditioner will drain out in this unit?" And they already knew where it would drain out. I did not. So I looked like an idiot. I was looking outside the window, I was looking around the wall, and I was like, well, it's a dry wall, so I think. And then they're like, it's right here. It's right there. See it? Right there. It was fun. At least they weren't a jerk about it. But yeah, it just comes with experience. Then, what else can I teach you guys about these things? Um, so electrical layout, sections, blah blah blah. I didn't do any plumbing works because whatever's there is that's it basically. Plumbing works, we have the sink. Under here we have the air conditioner, and then we have the restroom, which I'm not really commissioned for on this thing. I'm just commissioned for all these. Um, yeah, so I guess that's where I'm going to end this video for now. Just talking about details and stuff like that. Uh, I hope that you guys learned something. It's a lot of information to take in. I'm just kind of brushing through most of it, but I'm kind of trying to give you guys like a quick introduction on how details work, how you should go about doing details. I probably like I probably won't be able to go through every single thing with you guys regarding this, so it's better if you have like a question. You can just ask it in the comments below. I'm sorry if I answer a bit late. I do read through comments every like so often, but if you're an aspiring architect, one day you'll probably understand why I don't have that much time. Um, If you're a client, I hope you understand that I really don't have that much time. It's not an easy job. And I do try to, I don't believe that life should be all work, work, work. I try to also stay healthy by doing things that I enjoy, trying to exercise as much as I can. And even that is, it's hard for me to do because everything costs money. But as I've said in the past, you only need enough money to be happy. You don't need everything in life. And to be honest, I make I make enough to be happy. I don't need everything. And I wish I could make more, but I'm not going to stress out. I'm already losing my hair. I'm getting old. I'm forgetting words and abbreviations. Life is short, guys. Try to, while you're young, you know, keep trying to educate yourself while doing everything with all the energy you have and get into things that you enjoy doing. Try to make yourself better. That's all I ever hope for most people. Um, and yeah, so all this right here, uh, it's it's also one thing like I found it interesting that most new architects or most architecture students during the end of their studying, they have a hard time making decisions because you know, they're not particularly well educated on the subject. So they like for example this right here. So I just put design finished surface. Basically means they have to copy whatever's on the perspective that I will make. But um, I could also just put the specification bleached plywood or bleach finished surface plywood, something like that. And it's something that you won't really know how to explain until you're like further into your career. Bleach finished surface, bleach wood finished surface. Like there's so many words to it, when it's easier just to put this and then show them the picture. But like I said, that's part of specifications works. Here also you don't know what kind of materials you're using. You don't know the different sizes. You don't know the difference between kiln dried and regular lumber, nominal, whatever. Plywood. There's also different kinds of plywood, guys. Some plywood is basically just the reason they call it ply is because it's a bunch of plies, sheets put together. That's why plywood is the actual thickness because the sheets are already dried. They're pressed together. They make 3/4 inches, and they come in different sizes as well. They have 3/8 inches, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 1 inch. It all comes with experience, guys. And then you have the sizes, blah blah blah. Materials, mm, especially even how to use CAD is like tricky. I would call myself proficient in CAD, but there are people that are just like they can do much more amazing things. And I know it's kind of a give and take. Like I said, I know people that can do more amazing things, but they don't have any original ideas. And then there are those like really rare that can do amazing things with original ideas. And there's no point in trying to live up to that expectation. What's important is uh, you do your best at being you, you know. You don't have to be as good as anybody else. You just have to be good enough, you know. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're gonna, s- you don't want to be like me in my, earlier years in life where to be honest, I was just always depressed. But now I'm chill. I was always chill also back then, but and also know your know the people around you. Um, like I hear lots of stories of it's really sad. Like people will just take advantage of other people, especially like people in my position, licensed architect. They would take advantage of someone that's just like freshly graduated, and you know, they have like they have no idea what they're doing. And unlike me, they'd probably be a bit more aggressive with what they want in return. All I want in return is for you to subscribe and like my videos. Anyway, okay, that's enough. That's enough lecturing from Tito GN. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I hope we can always better ourselves. I hope you always take care, and until next time, guys, bye bye.